another video game adaptation, I guess, kind of video game TV series is here. Amazon Prime's Secret Level. The first 8 episodes are out right now for you to stream. If you don't know, Secret Level is an animated anthology series created by, I guess, Deadpool director Tim Miller for Amazon Prime Video. It's produced by his Blur Studios with Amazon MGM Studios. Dave Wilson executive produces and serves as supervising director, and it consists of 15 stories set in the world of different video games. The first 8 episodes, which are available now, the second half are coming, I guess if you're listening to this now, this coming week, December 17th. And they have told in the first 8 episodes stories in the worlds of Pac-Man, Armored Core, Unreal Tournament, Dungeons & Dragons, a whole bunch. So I want to know, we're going to kind of do not like a super deep dive review because only the first half is out right now. But I thought we could get our thoughts. We've watched the first half. We watched the first 8 episodes. So I want to know, guys, what do we think of Secret Level so far? Anyone feeling enthusiastic, passionate, excited? Lauren?
I think it's a great idea. I like what they're trying to do with this. Essentially, they are like, it's in the title, they are short stories that you might not have seen from the worlds of games that you love. However, coming away from the 8 episodes I've seen so far, none of them have made me want to play the games that they're based on. And I know that sometimes that is the intention of these video game adaptations. And I was trying to think about why. And I think perhaps it's because there's so much that is good about this, and that does feel like it is from the video game world, but I also think what they're inherently trying to do is everything that's against the video game world, which is when you sit down to play a video game, you're committing, 10, 20, 30 hours of your life to this story, to this gameplay, to this world, and they're trying to get it down to 10 minutes. So I just think it doesn't always work. And while a lot of the stories are good in their self-contained nature, it wasn't enough. It was just like a tiny little taste of something, and then it's gone. And I was sort of like, okay, do I want to commit 10, 20, 30 hours of my life to this based on that? Probably not. So I think that's probably where I'm at with it now. I will watch the rest of it and see if that opinion changes. But so far, those are my feelings.
Okay, I think that I've sort of been grasping for words in how, why I haven't loved it so far, and I think you just distilled my thoughts exactly. It is that mention of them just kind of condensing these things down into these tiny 7 to 10 minute little small stories doesn't do justice to, I think, a lot of these IP. And I think there are highlights here. Actually, I think the ones that are particularly great in my mind are ones that take the world of the video game and it is almost not unrecognizable from the video game, but tells its own story in that world, or does something pretty unrecognizable, or giving lore to something where there wasn't necessarily lore before. And then it's the other ones where it's okay, we're going to tell an Armored Core story, and it's just kind of going to fly by, and I never have time to buy into the story because it is so short. I think that what the series does quite well is action, and so a lot of them do come down to here's a quick little intro, here's some sick action, and an end. And the ones that intro hooked me are the ones that I thought are better than the others. And then the ones where it didn't hook me, it was just kind of okay, I don't really I do not really care about what is going on right now. But I think it's for video game fans, I think it's pretty cool to see some of these worlds realized. There are, I think, in this first batch specifically, a few titles that I'm I have never heard of that game, or I have heard of that game, but I have never seen the world. I've never really thought about that game. So seeing this 7-minute story set in that world is kind of I want to know more about that world. I feel like I'm just kind of getting thrown in here. Tom, I don't know, are you similar feelings here?
I think so. Going into this, because this comes from the Love, Death and Robots creative team, I think.
Actually, have you guys done Love, Death and Robots? Is this a style of storytelling that you enjoy? I haven't watched that series at all, so I have really no experience with it.
Yeah, I've watched a bit of it, and I like some of it because it is anthology. You're bound to gravitate to some more than others, but I was worried like that it was going to be similar to that, where it's kind of like, okay, we're going to do like some really cool visuals and really cool action, but maybe not do as much of like the storytelling. And I think that's where this also kind of falls into, which I think is a bit of a shame, because I think, yeah, like I said, there are some stories here that I think are pretty well done. And it's not an easy thing, right? Like, because they only have a certain amount of time. So it's hard to like really, yeah, like you guys have kind of talked about, condense something into such a short amount of time. But I do also think you can do it. My mind kind of jumped to like the Overwatch shorts that they've done with Blizzard, which in a way those only focus on one hero, so it's a lot easier to kind of tell one individual story rather than a whole game story in some of these cases, down to like one little 20-minute or less. But yeah, a lot of these I just found it hard to like connect with them, or I just found them kind of uninteresting, or even like, and this we'll talk about a bit more, but I think like I wondered why some of these were here in the first place, in terms of like, this is an animated anthology, and I just thought some of them like, does this need to be animated? Like, could this not just be like a live action thing? Specifically one of them, I was like, this feels strange to be here.
Which one? I'm interested.
The Crossfire one. Like, it's just, like,
yeah.
They could have just done that with
I
real
was
people,
watching that
you
one
know?
with somebody in the house. Like, we had a friend over, and they were sitting watching with me, and I was like, this just is like this to me could be just like any action, like any just like
Yeah.
Netflix action movie. Like I'm like, okay, well, gotta get the briefcase out. Like, it's we're gonna get shot at in the car, and yeah, no, I agree with you there.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I feel like you could have used that opportunity to tell a more creatively, like a visually more interesting thing, if that's what you're going to focus on with this anthology setup, and giving it to that another franchise. But yeah, there are some that I like I said, but I think overall I don't love this that much. But there's some good ideas, I think, throughout.
Was there any particular element or favorite episode, like something that you wanted to shout out here?
I think my favorite one is the Pac-Man one, because it is so wacky, and we found out retroactively that like Shadow Labyrinth, which was revealed at the Game Awards, is like the Pac-Man episode is a prequel to that game. So it's an interesting way of, I guess it was like the Concord thing of this is like promoting that future game. So I thought that was my favorite because one, it had a unique style compared to the like photorealistic stuff that most of these ones have. But also I think it just did a really good job of like setting up the stakes, which weren't like, and there wasn't a lot to set up. It was very simple. Like, you're in a labyrinth, you gotta eat, I guess. And then that was really
gotta
it.
get those cherries.
And I thought like they just did a really good job of like the storytelling in that one. So that was my favorite of these.
Yeah, I think that for me was like one of the highlights, just because it was so weird, and it was like when they said they were gonna do a Pac-Man episode, I was kind of like, what? How? Like, what does that even mean? And I think like for years, people in the gaming community have joked about like gritty Mega Man or a gritty Bomberman or gritty Pac-Man. Like, what would these like old like arcade games, what could they like look like in modern day? And I think that this was like a very unique way to kind of take this kind of classic franchise, and it was kind of terrifying. Like when the Pac-Man robot like bore into that guy, like I guess that's Pac-Man, that like the hooded figure, when the round robot, like the puck, bored into his stomach, it was like, this is awful. Like I am having a visceral reaction to this. The only I think that was a highlight for me. The other episode that like I really liked was the Unreal Tournament episode, because it was so like I don't know the lore of that world at all, but like it was immediately like, oh, like this is from the robot's perspective, cool. And it was kind of this like very short story of rebellion, I guess, and it had very cool action. They had like the cool off-the-wall weapons that Unreal Tournament has, and it was a very interesting way to like translate like, oh, like this game that all it is just team death matches. How do you set that in a world? How do you set that in a universe with these maps and these levels and the guns and these warring factions? And it all made sense, and I thought that was like very well done. Like, I would watch more of that one, but it was really those two for me that were like fantastic, and then everything else was kind of a step below it. Everything looked beautiful. I think that's something I do want to shout out to. Like, I would love to know how much one of these costs. I would love to know how long one of these took to render, because like you look at like, I don't know, even the Crossfire episode, some of that stuff looks photorealistic. Like those like cityscapes with like the scaffolding and like the tarps flapping in the wind, like that looks like real life. Whereas some of the episodes, like the Pac-Man one, is a little more stylized. They have a different animation style. And I think if we were to go forward with this, I would almost want them to do more of like a Star Wars Visions thing, whereas I like seeing Blur do all of these, but I think it would almost be better if it was 15 different animation studios doing their own take on something.
Well, that's kind of what Love, Death and Robots was from memory. Like they were all different styles. And so I was kind of expecting that here. There was the Sifu episode that felt very stylized, and like fitting for that kind of animation that they use in the game. But the other ones, like I'm with you. I was like right from the start, I was like, wow, this looks so real. I feel like I'm looking at Unreal Engine 7 or something like that. And I was like, if this is the future of video game cutscenes, like we're in for a real treat, because I couldn't even believe that. I might even have to research this, but like, was some of that not motion capture? Because if not, it's insane, like how realistic it was.
How do you animate that? Like this, it's bonkers. You can see every pore on Keanu's face.
Yeah, that's right. And so if it wasn't motion capture, I'm blown away. And like, yeah, he looks exactly like Keanu Reeves. That was one of my highlights, actually. I quite liked the Armored Core episode, which is the one that Keanu's in, and is basically about the relationship between the pilot and I suppose the AI in his brain. And what I think was interesting about that as well is like there are some of these episodes that are dedicated to kind of being a little bit not ironic, but like self-aware. And that was one of those episodes where it felt like it was a commentary on you being a player in a game and like the meta reality of that. Whereas some of them, I also really liked the Pac-Man episode too, because it was just so different, and it felt like they were like creative and given the leash to do that. And I also liked the Unreal Tournament one because it felt real to what the game was like, and they had like, you know, First Blood and like Ultra Kill and this and that. I was like, great, that felt like I was playing the game. So there are these three kind of distinct parts to the series, and I think when they get one of those right or commit to one of those, it goes well. But there are some that it's just like, it feels like you're trying to distill this entire game into 5 minutes, and I'm just not with you. I thought the Dungeons and Dragons one was maybe quite victim to that. I was sort of like, we're going to do this thing, this big epic quest, and it's done in 5 minutes, and I just couldn't get into that, because Dungeons and Dragons is like, people play campaigns for years, so I just don't think it did it justice in that time. So yeah, I think it's successful when it has like it commits to its one idea, because it's a short, you only have a limited amount of time. But anytime that it was trying to, I guess, yeah, just distill something, it didn't really do it.
Lauren, you said in the document that you liked the performances and the voice acting. Was that kind of across the whole series? You think that was like a strong point?
I think so. They have some really great actors involved in this. Some of them have more time to shine, others don't. I actually thought Arnold Schwarzenegger was quite good in his episode. That was one of the stories where I was like, this is kind of silly. I don't think I'll ever be playing this game. But it was a pretty decent story. Like, it wasn't very surprising, but I think about that one when I'm like looking at this list. Keanu was great. And I also really liked anytime we had, I suppose it was in like mainly the Pac-Man episode and the Armored Core episode, but they were like voices that I was supposed like either in the head or the voice of the Pac-Man. They were really good. Like, I just thought those performances were great. I think one was Emily Swallow and the other was... I'll look it up. You guys keep talking.
Okay, awesome. Tom, anything else that you want to throw in here?
Well, just quickly on performances. I wasn't the biggest fan of Arnold. I like.
What episode was Arnold in? You said Arnold Schwarzenegger, and
the New World Eternum one. It was like the one where the guy kept coming back up to life. I do think, for me at least, if it wasn't Arnold, I would have actually really liked that one. But I think for me, the way he just enunciates certain things and like emoted, I was just like, oh god, you're so close. You're so close to this being good, but I can get into it. No, I think the one thing that I'm interested about with this series the most is that, like, most of these I don't really have like a huge connection to. So I'm wondering, like, for fans of these, like Warhammer, for example, or like or Armored Core, like, are they getting what they want out of this? Like, because for the Warhammer one, for example, I thought that was kind of like a middling one. They had like some cool action, but I just
Really cool action.
the story just went over my. I had no idea what was going on. But having said that, there is this fan animated Warhammer shorts, which you can go look up. It's called Astartes, and that does a really good job of just like putting you in this world, and just setting up the stakes. And it's a really cool Warhammer short. I don't feel like that. While the action I think was amazing, I don't think that this one did the same thing that short does. So I wonder how fans going into this, knowing all the franchise lore, are if they're taking away anything from this, because that is the big kind of barrier, I think, is that they either feel like they go very surface level because they can't go too in depth, or they just go straight in. We're not going to explain anything, and you're just gonna have to hold on. And like, I guess that's all you can really do with the time allotted. But I think there was maybe a better way of handling this with some of these ones.
What episode of the second batch are we most looking forward to?
I'm ready to be surprised by any of them. I think there's probably two. I am just intrigued by the PlayStation 1. I'll be honest, I've read, like, some people have obviously seen them all and written reviews, and that PlayStation 1 has not been getting good reviews. But I would like to form my own judgment. So I'm excited for that. I know that, like, Kratos and Jin and all that are going to be in it somehow, and I just want to see what they do with it. And Concord, because we're not going to get any more of the game, so I'd like to see if the short at all does it justice, and it helps me experience it in some way.
Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I think the Concord one as well. I'm so intrigued, like, what that's even gonna be. Because, like, for me, I didn't mind the cutscenes from what I saw from that game. I thought that was, like, pretty fun, controversially. But the other one's the Mega Man one, because that just seems like it's gonna be the best one. I don't know. I have a good feeling about it. But it seems like it's paying respect to it, but but also doing something like a bit different with the franchise. So I think probably those two are the ones I'm looking forward to.
Okay, I think the only one that I'll mention that hasn't been mentioned is the Spelunky one. The teaser from that, the animation style looks really cool, and I think that could be that kind of Indiana Jones style adventure could be something you could distill down into like 10 minutes, like just like, okay, we're in a tomb and we're trying to find a treasure, and things are going to happen. So I think that's going to be good. You can let us know what you thought about Secret Level Part 1 over on social media. You can follow the show. We are at controller_club on Twitter, at controllerclubpod on Instagram, and controller.club on TikTok. We'll watch the second half, and we'll see if we have any strong opinions, and we'll reconvene on the podcast next week and see what we're thinking. We may not do a deep dive. Kind of when we were watching these episodes, like, oh, I don't know if we need to do like a full deep dive conversation on this show,